for 60 minutes, we play Iowa State football together.
Welcome back into the Iowa State Fan Perspective here at Play the Fight Song College Football Show. We've got an action-packed episode, jam-packed. We will go for as long as we want because, ladies and gentlemen, it is game week. I'm your host tonight, as always. My name is Jake, joined each and every single week with my brother Justin, my other co-host JT. As you can tell, according to my voice, this is of course like week 0, game 1 preview for the Cyclones. This is my MJ flu game, and you may ask, like, wouldn't you just postpone it, Jake, to like maybe Tuesday or Wednesday to doing this show? And that's not what we do here, Justin. We get our previews out every Monday, every Tuesday. We're pretty true to our word, especially during the season, and I'm pretty sure they didn't move back game 6 for MJ when he had the flu. So we're going to do what we can tonight. I think the excitement anyways, it's going to take over for me. So I'm ready to get into it tonight. How are we doing, Justin? Are we ready to go? Aer Lingus Classic week.
Yeah, I'm glad you're taking the whole voice thing in with some humility, ready to get after it here. But I couldn't be more excited for this game. Obviously, we've been talking about it all summer. Still feels a little surreal. It doesn't really feel normal that it's the middle of August and we got a game in 5 days. And I'm sure Campbell's upset about it too, because missed another week of camp. I know he was excited to get those guys out there in heat, and I don't know what it's like at Sioux Falls right now, but it feels like a toasty, like 90. It's like 90. Feels like 97 out there right now. So I know he's just pissed that he's missing another opportunity to make the guys practice and something like this.
I do appreciate it too. If you're watching us here on the YouTube, we have what an absolute gem we have in your background there with the neon Cyclone sign. I mean, the people at home are going to be wondering where you got that thing. So you might as well give a shout out to where you got that awesome sign.
Yeah, having a little difficult time getting it to shine correctly in the background, but I think that's kind of the best that I got going right now. Felt like I'd spice things up for the first season. I was going to throw it up last Sunday, but I wanted to save it for this week for the preseason preview. Actually got it on Facebook Marketplace from the Carroll area where we're from. So if you guys want to check it out and get one for yourself, they make them custom over there. So,
I mean, if you don't already, like, I'm not saying you need to be religious on Facebook Marketplace, but you need to keep your eye on Facebook Marketplace probably at least once a week, I think, because outside of just awesome Iowa State signs, you can find almost anything you're looking for on Facebook Marketplace. So good call. Good poll there, Justin. That looks great. We almost look like full-time professional podcasters more and more every week as we try. And I got my 2002 retro Iowa State helmet in the background. It's kind of hidden in the dark, but
I need to work on the lighting, maybe put some lights underneath my shelf over there because you can't see it. I've got the Ames alternate helmet that you got me, and then I've got the Cyclones alternate helmet on top with a little other stuff over there, but you can't really see it that well. Maybe I'll kind of figure that out as we go, but not really why we're here right now to cover the game going into next week.
Well, that's just a good plug, Justin, because if you guys want to see our backgrounds clear and as picturesque as possible, you got to subscribe to the channel so we can maybe make some money off of this podcast thing because we enjoy doing this every single week. Subscribe to the channel. If you're new here, like the video. If you're a Kansas State fan, welcome to the show. We appreciate having you guys on every single week as we dive into the opponent here every single Sunday and Monday during the season. So we appreciate you guys. Before we get into all that, we do have to give our shout out to our favorite partners at No Rivals, shopnorivals.com. The best hats in all of collegiate sports. Justin rocking the old baseball logo. I'm rocking I think they call this the alumni edition. And Kansas State fans, they have basically every single collection that Iowa State has at No Rivals. So go and shop norivals.com. Try and get that before you're back in Bill Snyder Stadium in week 1. Same thing for Iowa State fans. Get your hat before you're back in Jack Trice Stadium for South Dakota in 2 weeks. So we appreciate those guys as always. All right, we'll quit wasting your guys' time. We have basically gone through the entire offseason, and we are ready to talk real game, real football, real play, because on Saturday, the Cyclones take the field in Dublin, Ireland, against the Kansas State Wildcats. Standalone game, Justin. I think both teams should be really, really excited. I think the Big 12 Conference in general should be super excited to have this rivalry on show for the entire landscape of the college football nation to watch because it's the first game of the year. There's a few other games at week 0 that we will definitely cover here at Play the Fight Song, but this is this is the matinee. Like, this is the prime time show that everybody gets to watch. And we've been feeding for real football, like not NFL preseason football, like real collegiate conference game implication football. So I know we've kind of covered this, Justin, but like, let's get your last initial thoughts on like just the excitement around this game and what this could mean to the conference and both programs this year.
There are a lot of games in the preseason or in the first couple of weeks with non-conference play that are going to be really impactful for the college football season as a whole. And obviously, we're kind of biased over here covering the Big 12, covering Iowa State, but this is going to be one of the most impactful games of the first 4 weeks of college football. Having it be a conference game, having it be a rivalry game, having it being a game that historically is always close and always kind of a battle. Putting it as week 0 as a standalone game, I couldn't think of a better time to showcase what these two schools have to offer, as well as the Big 12. And a lot's riding on the line. I know we've talked a lot about some of the preseason games and how important they are for Iowa State and some other teams, but having this be a conference game that we're used to being the last game of the year and kind of used to this game having some sort of implication on how the Big 12 is going to end up shaping up, having it be the first game of the year and having to be your best right away. It's a lot of pressure on these two teams, and it makes it a lot of fun, gets you excited as a fan, makes you a little nervous, but that's the stuff you kind of live for with these type of matchups.
It is a different type of vibe. Just, I'm sure Kansas State fans can relate that North Dakota is not on deck. South Dakota, your FCS opponent's not on deck week 1. Like, this game really matters, and there's going to be one disappointed fan base at the end of the day that, quite frankly, is put behind in the back seat really early, as far as, because both of these programs have high expectations to get to Dallas this year. And the loser of this game, you're going to be behind the 8 ball really early, and you're going to have to make up your ground once you get back into Big 12 play into September, late September, obviously early October. So just something neither one of these guys have faced. So that brings it all fascinating in itself. As far as the college football landscape goes, anybody in college, if you're a true sicko college football fan like you are here at Play the Fight Song, if you listen to our show, you probably are. This is a top 25 matchup. Like, this is a big deal. This isn't, everyone wants to hype up every Big Ten, SEC matchup. Like, this is a really big deal that I'm excited that everybody gets to have eyes on. One of the oldest rivalries in college football, long-standing consecutive played matchups in a row. It's one of, if not the longest. So super excited there. The Cyclones coaches poll, or the AP poll, actually came out last week. Cyclones come in at number 22. Kansas State comes in at 17. So roughly where we kind of expected both of these programs to be at. I think, as an Iowa State fan, I think the 22 spot is fine. I just go out there and win football games. I think you deserved to be in the top 25. And as an Iowa State fan, I think that's all I could ask for. I don't know. You're not complaining about the 22 spot, are you?
No. And it kind of shows to the point where we're at with our program now, where it's not that big a deal for us to be rated in the preseason, which, crazy to say, like, none of us really would have believed that 5-6 years ago, but the preseason AP poll doesn't mean a whole lot to me. A lot of the times it matters what happens in conference play and as the season goes on. And surprisingly, we've got one of those games right here in the 3rd week of August that's going to have a big implication on what that's going to end up being.
So if you guys are new to this, new to our previews, we kind of go through the same format every week, give you some players to watch. From the Kansas State side of things, you guys already know what the Iowa State roster kind of looks like. We'll give you the keys to the game, but being the first game of the year, usually we recap the week before. So this year we're going to recap last year's matchup between these two. We're going to give a little recap on where Kansas State kind of ended up the season. If you're Iowa State and you're kind of remembering, you need a refresher on those kind of things. So Justin, let's start there. The 2024 game, if you were a Cyclone fan, one of the most memorable games in your lifetime. I don't care if you've been a fan since 1970 or if you've just got into Iowa State football in maybe the mid 2000s. This was an all-timer because it sealed Iowa State for their 10th regular season victory for the first time in program history. The Cyclones won in this matchup on the last game of the season, 29-21. It was a bitter cold game, night game in Jack Trice Stadium. The fans were really awesome, and it was kind of a slugfest. really. It's just back and forth between these two, as you would expect. Justin, I went back and rewatched this one, and I looked at the stats, rewatching a little bit clips on YouTube. Rocco was not good. Like, Rocco was 13 of 35. I think he had one or two scores. On the other side, Avery Johnson was really good, except for like two super critical plays that you could argue lost him the football game. So that was kind of fascinating to go back and be refreshed on that. You kind of just forget that, because that was 9 months ago. Iowa State had a ton of success running the football, rushed for over almost 200 yards, 190 yards, 4.3 yards per carry. I kind of forgot they had such success running the football. And then I mentioned before, K-State basically had two critical fumbles and a safety that basically lost them the football game. Iowa State, Rocco didn't have his best passing game, but overall a clean football game for Iowa State. Like, what do you remember most from that game a few months ago?
Yeah, you don't need to remind me how cold it was. We were one of the first people in the parking lot that night. We were there at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon or something. So we got the full experience of the cold. And honestly, I felt like the cold played a really big part in that game. I know you said Avery Johnson played really well and Rocco didn't, but I honestly didn't think either quarterbacks played very well. I know Avery obviously had better stats, but Avery was still 12 of 28 to Rocco's 13 of 35. Neither one of these quarterbacks threw for over 40%. And I think that kind of had a little bit to do with the cold, and a lot of it with the receivers had a hard time catching the ball. Honestly, Kansas State broke a couple big plays, but they also had some turnovers go against them. Like you said, neither team was very good on third down. Kansas State was 3 of 13. Iowa State was 4 of 16. But they just stuck with it, Iowa State, and they had a couple breaks go their way, and they were able to hang on. And that's kind of the biggest thing that I remember. And it's something that made me think about this upcoming game, because the last 2 years, weather's played a really big factor in this game, where to me, it felt like Iowa State was kind of the mentally tougher team in both of those scenarios, and Kansas State just kind of let it get away from them both times. Makes me very interested to see how it's going to shape up this time, and if that's going to play an advantage to Kansas State in this game.
That's a great point, and I'm glad you kind of mentioned the weather factor that when it comes to this. In Kansas State, for those who don't remember, finished 8-4 in the regular season in 2024. They dropped that stunner at home to Arizona State that basically kicked them out of conference title contention. Then they lost to Iowa State. That was within like a 3-week span. They finished off with a bowl game win against Rutgers. They finished 8th in the conference at 5-4. Just to most programs, that would be a satisfactory season. But K-State fans have higher expectations with a Chris Kleiman coach football team within this new Big 12. So you got to think, preseason, this team is either 2 or 1 in a lot of preseason Big 12 polls. So really fascinating to see where they can go from here. And like you mentioned before, Justin, in the notes, dropped 3 of the final 4 regular season games. Again, something that you don't see a ton out of a Kansas State team. Usually you kind of see them really finishing the season strong and playing their best football. Let's get into players to watch. If you're an Iowa State fan and you don't really have a clear understanding or idea of what this roster looks like for K-State, I will plug one of our shows, Justin. After this, go back. If you really want a complete in-depth look at what Kansas State looks like this year, go back to our summer series where we did Get to Know the Opponent with the Cocaine Willie podcast. Those guys were awesome. It was one of my favorite shows we did this summer. We got a ton of awesome feedback on that. And they broke down the entire K-State roster for us. So I feel like I have a good idea of where this team is at.
We should get the link to that in the description for this pod when we post it.
That's Justin, you're kind of the brains of this whole thing. That's a good idea. I will actually put a link. I will put the link to that in the bio. So I appreciate you throwing that to me, Justin. This is why we bring you around. All right. Players to watch. I'll go first. I'll cover the defense. I'll give you 3 guys to highlight on the defensive side of the ball for Kansas State. Justin will go through the offensive side, and Kansas State's got some dudes to follow on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm excited for him to get into that. But this is a Kansas State defense that I think is looking to bounce back here in 2025. I think that there were some spots last year where I think they wish they would have been better at. Quite frankly, I think defending the run was one of them. And honestly, a couple of NFL corners on their team, like Jacob Parrish a year ago, and you would have thought they would have been better at defending the pass as well. It's a young secondary led by one guy in the back, and VJ Payne. He's going to be the first guy I'm going to highlight, a senior safety who a lot of people are going to be really reliant on in this defense because it's a young corner group, a young corner pairing. Gunnar Maldonado comes over from Arizona, where he's started plenty of games at Arizona, but just kind of battled some injuries. So him and Payne are going to be in the back end of this defense that could make or break this defense, I think, when we first talk about it. Second guy I want to highlight is Austin Romaine. Like, clear and cut, one of the best linebackers in this conference, 54 solo tackles last year. This is kind of the quarterback of that defense for Chris Kleiman, and they're expecting him to lead the way, and he's going to have to play at an all-conference, first-team all-conference level if Kansas State wants to have one of the best defenses in all of college football. Right now, preseason, you look at it, the front seven is the strength of this team for Kansas State, but out of that front seven, the linebacking core is the strength of this football team. Last guy I want to highlight, I mentioned it before, they got a defensive line, Justin, that we'll kind of break down a little bit about. I think it could give Iowa State some fits. I think that they're better at the defensive end spots than maybe more so in the middle compared to Iowa State, led by Dom Orange. But I want to get this right, and our guys at Cocaine Willie can give me crap for this because I'm probably going to murder it. But Toby Ususame is a defensive end who 19 tackles last year, 3.5 sacks, and I think he's just coming into his own. Like, as a sophomore, stood out, had some flashes last year, and he could be a second team, first team, all defensive end guy if he plays to his fullest potential. I think that's really where this defense is at. It's kind of a wait and see kind of thing for me. With the defense, I would love to see where this is at. It's a talented group, but I think it's newer in some spots, and we'll see. I'm really interested to see if Iowa State has success running the football on this team for the third year in a row, because you've got to think that was the biggest emphasis of the offseason, especially with the pride they take in that defensive line. They are going to refuse to let Abu Sama and Carson Hansen run for 4 yards a carry again. You got to think that was the focal point of the defense.
Yeah, it's got to be their focus coming into this game, because, I mean, the last 2 years we had more of a proven pass game to beat them, and we've been able to rely on the run game against them, which now coming into this game, they obviously know, and we know that the emphasis coming into the game, at least, like, Iowa State's going to have to find success running the football, or they're going to have to turn to some guys who are very unproven to try to win a game in mid-August over in Ireland, which sounds like a big ask. So obviously both teams are going to be ready for it. Last year, it really wasn't something that I thought Iowa State was going to be able to lean on as much as they did, and they proved me wrong. So we'll see if it's something they can do again going into this one.
All right, Justin, take us through the offense. And before we get into that, I got to mention, this is an offense that may have a different look, a lot of same personnel as far as stars. This is a group that's going through a new offensive coordinator change in former Utah State head coach Matt Wells. So, Justin, give us 3 guys to watch on the offensive side of the ball for the Kansas State Wildcats on Saturday.
Yeah, obviously their defense has been kind of their calling card and something that they've been able to rely on, but doesn't really have any big-time names that you can kind of lean on and go to. It's more of a team defense type of thing. The offense is kind of opposite, where they really kind of rely, or are planning to rely on this year, on 3 main guys. Obviously, that starts with Avery Johnson. I think for people who've listened to this podcast know that I've been kind of critical of him in his last season. So I'll try to be as fair as I can with this breakdown going into this one, which I expect him to be better going into this year. I expect him to improve. And like I said, I think the weather last year really kind of affected their team. So I am a little nervous about how Iowa State's going to handle him going into this game, because we also know that running quarterbacks are something that have given Iowa State trouble. I think Avery Johnson came on to the season really well last year, running the ball, especially early in the season. As he kind of got dinged up as the year went on, is kind of where you saw the cracks start to show and kind of his inexperience start to show. especially with them dropping 3 or 4 games towards the end of the year. Whenever Avery was able to take care of the ball last year, this team was winning. He had 2 picks against Arizona State, Houston, and BYU. They lost all 3 of those games. The only game that they lost that he didn't have an interception in was the Iowa State game. So how can he kind of take care of the football is one of the big things that I'm interested in. Coming into the year, he's completed about 55% of his passes the last 2 seasons. If he can take that jump and get over 60% completion percentage and also kind of limit his interceptions, I think this is a huge jump that he could take and really going to propel that offense, because obviously the ceiling is only going to be as high as people think Avery's going to take them. And a lot of people think he's going to take that jump, but it is something that still is unproven. That's kind of where I've come in and been a little more critical of him than others have, because I see the talent, I see the expectations that people are putting on him, and he very well could take those this year, but I want to see it first. And last year, I was just very critical because I don't think he had really made that jump. He still had those games, multiple interceptions, had a couple games where the inconsistencies were there, and he really wasn't able to run the ball as much towards the end of the year as he was towards the beginning. But with this being the first game of the year, no weather being involved, it's something that Iowa State is definitely going to have to deal with. Some of his favorite targets to look out for, obviously Jace Brown, one of the top returning receivers in the conference coming into this season, had 47 catches and 823 yards last year. Obviously finished the game with only 3 catches against Iowa State, but 3 of those catches ended up in 2 touchdowns, and he had 106 yards. Yeah. So I know it's something we're going to touch on in a little bit, but how Iowa State's going to be able to contain him is going to be very important for the Cyclone defense, because he's an explosive receiver, and if they're able to get him going on top of Avery Johnson's running game, it's going to be a lot to handle. And the running back coming into this year, Dylan Edwards, showed a lot of potential last year, had 200 yards in their bowl game. Obviously wasn't very effective against Iowa State because they still had DJ Giddens last year, but this is somebody that the Kansas State faithful is very high on. He averaged about 7 yards per carry last year, but hasn't really had much experience having a full workload in his 2 seasons. 2023 played at Colorado, for those who don't know, in the last year at K-State. In his 3 seasons, he hasn't had more than 3 games where he's touched or carried the ball over 10 times. But last year, whenever that was the case, he showed out really well. Had still ended the season with 5 touchdowns and almost 600 yards. So it'll be interesting to see how he's going to handle a bigger workload this year. But if his efficiency can carry over to that, he's going to be a very dangerous weapon for this Kansas State offense.
Yeah, really well highlighted. That's one of the biggest, I don't know, things to watch for this game is they love their backup running back Joe Jackson too. Let's mention that. But I am really interested to see how many carries does Edwards get on Saturday. Did they give him 15? Do they, if it's not explosive, if they're just trying to get him to go 2, 3, 4 yards at a time, do they continue to get in the ball? He's also a big playmaker in the special teams, and we'll highlight that a little bit too. So great points there. Well highlighted. It's also an offensive line who lost their Ohio State transfer, George Fitzpatrick, and one of their best offensive linemen last year transferred to Washington. So new offensive line too, that's really kind of fascinating going against a new Iowa State defensive line, especially on the edges there. So those are kind of the guys to look out for Kansas State. You might even mention the tight ends too. K-State will probably let me know in the comments that I didn't.
Yeah, they obviously have more than these 3 weapons, but these are the 3 guys. And I think these 3 guys kind of sum up their offense as a whole.
Yeah.
All really high ceilings, but all still haven't really showed it in large sample sizes. But this is why people are projecting them to win the conference, because if these 3 can be dependable all year long, this team is going to be a lot to handle.
Very well said. And those are 3 names, Justin, that we're recording this on Sunday afternoon. Probably will be taken in our first annual college fantasy draft. You got to think one of those 3 will probably be taken. So we'll keep an eye out on that. All right. Let's wrap it up with prediction time. Before we get into all that, we want to give out a shout out to our new partner at Frost Buddy. Some of the best koozies and cups, all you can find in your tailgating needs. These guys keep your drinks warm and cool for whatever desires. We know the weather always changes. It's always super hot in September during football season, and then you're going to need your little maybe Fireball coffee warmed up in November kickoff. So shop Frost Buddy, use the URL link, frostbuddy.com/PTFS. That lets them know we sent you guys there. Go check them out. And they got a lot of awesome stuff. Over 80 different teams that they do. They got Iowa State Cups, they got Kansas State Cups. We partner with teams, or I guess companies, that show a lot of support through all college athletics. So we're super excited about those guys. So frostbuddy.com/PTFS. All right, Justin, let's get into the keys of the game, and then we'll get to the prediction time before I maybe got ahead of myself there. Here are my 3 keys of the game. We kind of agreed on them, and then I'll let you kind of break down maybe what you think is the most important. Here's number 1 key to the game for me. And I don't even know if it's a key to the game or if it's more of just something to watch, but will Avery Johnson try to play hero ball on Saturday? He's got a full year under his belt. You mentioned he's back. He's fully healthy. And there were at times last year, like the safety in Jack Trice Stadium was such a big play, but that's kind of Avery Johnson to a T at some points. Like, really tried to extend plays because he's such a freak athlete and he's so fast, and he just got himself into some trouble last year. Is he going to play simple, use his legs when he needs to? Can he, obviously him and Edwards are going to have like an RPO look that I think could be really, really quick, but Iowa State, I think, will be well prepared for Avery. And that's not to say Avery can't beat them, because I think he's very, very talented, but I think John Haycock's going to challenge Avery at times that is basically going to let Avery make a decision. Are you just going to make the simple play and live for another down? Or are you going to try to be the hero, that Heisman contender, and really try to maximize as much as you can? Really interested to see it. I think we'll find out, because I do think this is obviously going to be a close game. Vegas indicates it well. So we're going to find out if Avery has matured over his off season to where maybe he's ready for these critical moments. Number 2, key to the game, Jeremiah Cooper versus Jace Brown. I don't know where Jeremiah Cooper is going to be at on this defense. He's led at safety. There's been lingers about other places where he might get moved around. But either way, Jace Brown had an absolute field day with Jeremiah Cooper at times last year in his 3 catches for over 100 yards. And we didn't mention the tight ends like Garrett Oakley and 5-star Lincoln Cure. Either way, I think Brown has the capability to be a first-team all-conference guy, and he lit up Iowa State last year. And it's time for maybe not even just Jeremiah Cooper, but I do want to highlight Jeremiah Cooper because he is the elder statesman of a secondary in a safety in a back end that's going to feature Marcus Neal, Tayshaun James, Jamison Patton. We know Jontez Williams, and Jontez might line up against Jace, but I think Jeremiah is due for a big 2025 year because he took some steps back last year. I think he can admit that, and that K-State game was one of those chances. So I'm excited to see what Jeremiah can do for this football team on Saturday. And lastly, and I think this should be the key to the game maybe every year, but special teams. And I highlighted special teams, 2 words, very, very emphasized, because Kyle Conradi was pretty good last year in this one, 2 of 3, and had a chance to, God, that last kick, what was it, 35 yards? And he missed it. And Kansas State had a chance, down 8, to go down the field and tie the football game.
The cold was getting to everybody last year. Like
absolutely.
It doesn't look the same as the 2023 game with all the snow on the ground where you thought that was going to slow some things down, but receivers were dropping the ball. Guys were missing kicks. Like there was a lot going on last year.
But that's always to be made with just this rivalry in general. And Kyle was really, really good last year. He clearly won Iowa State some football games with his legs. And I just hope he can continue that success in 2025, because I think he's going to be heavily relied on to make kicks on Saturday. And every point is going to count in this rivalry game. So I think it's up to him. I think it's up to the punt team to play really well. We mentioned Dylan Edwards, like special teams. When I think of 3 special teams plays in this rivalry, I think of the kickoff return in 2019. I cannot remember what Youngblood for K-State that took that back and absolutely deflated Iowa State. I remember the blocked extra point in Kansas City in 2009. like special teams, especially just because of who the coaches are and how big they emphasize that spot in football. Like special teams is going to be a massive piece on Saturday. And both of these teams have X factors who could lead their teams to wins if they maximize their potential. So Justin, I don't know if you want to get into the special team stuff or any of those three keys to the game, but those are my three keys to the game for this one.
Yeah, if you look at the history of this Farmegeddon rivalry and the history of the Aer Lingus Classic, a lot of the times, Farmegeddon game, it's almost always a 7-point game or less. And if you look at the history of this Aer Lingus Classic, 4 of the last 5 games have been decided by 3 points or fewer. And the one that wasn't was Navy versus Notre Dame, kind of a huge spread, which you expected to not be very close. So obviously,
last year, the Aer Lingus Classic won on a walk-off field goal for Georgia Tech.
So obviously, especially in a Big 12 conference game too, first game of the year, a lot of jitters. It's going to be a close game. So it's kind of something that we're going to touch on a lot, especially in the Big 12 when we know how close these teams are. It's about limiting mistakes and it's about special teams. It sounds super cliche, but last year it was something that Iowa State did really well, and it's why we came out on the good side of a lot of one-score games. I know a lot of people just expect going into a new season that luck's going to flip, but I think it's something that's coached into this team, and I think it's something that Iowa State is going to try to lean on again. I know you touched on Avery Johnson and him taking care of the football, being kind of an X factor, and I think that's a big question mark going into this game. I obviously expect him to be a little smarter and improved and more mature as the year progresses from last, but there's a lot on this kid's shoulders, and as stressful as this game is, nobody's going to be under more pressure than that guy going into this game. So seeing how he's going to handle that is going to be a really big predictor going into this season.
What if Iowa State has the ball down 4-7, whatever you want to call it, last position of the game? Like, that's another thing I'm really interested to watch out for, because Iowa State obviously had all of the game-winning drives last year. Like, how early can Rocco rely on other guys who aren't, Jalen Noel, Jaden Higgins? First game of the year, if we have the ball with a chance to win, who are we going to throw it to? I'm fascinated for it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was something I was interested going into this game too, because it's something that we've kind of talked off air about, like with the Iowa game and kind of what these teams look like going into the season. Iowa State's obviously known for running a super vanilla offense early in the season. With this being a conference game, like, you can't really hold anything back, but how tuned up are these offenses going to be? Is Iowa State going to have a couple trick plays that they're going to rely on in this game? I know 2 seasons ago we relied on a lot of big plays, obviously not trick plays, but just broken runs by Sama. And last year it was more about just taking care of the football. But do you think they're going to have some stuff dialed up going into this game?
Taylor Mauser is our offensive coordinator. I will say, I don't know if he's going to be the best offensive coordinator of all time in Iowa State history. Very well could be, but I don't think there's anybody better out of timeout plays than Taylor Mauser. Like, if he was a basketball coach, he would be so coveted because he could draw up any play and get you a bucket. Like, he is phenomenal out of timeouts. That pass against Utah, that Carson Hansen pass. There was a game against West Virginia that he had an awesome they were down, or Iowa State was up 10 or something, and West Virginia still had a chance to maybe get a stop and do something. They call a timeout. They get Jaden Higgins wide open, and I'm sure I'm missing a couple more, but yeah, he's going to be ready for it.
Which is very true, but a lot of those plays we ended up leaning on Noel and Higgins. I think especially of that Iowa game, coming down to that last drive, hitting the quick hitters to both of those guys to get us down the field in just a couple seconds. Are we going to be able to rely on Townsend and Sowell the same way coming into this game? I'm sure they're going to try to get some trick plays going with Townsend to try to take advantage of his athletic ability. I know they're probably going to try to rely on Burkle and Bramer, especially seeing those guys coming to the season fully healthy. So that's something I'm definitely keeping my eye on how Iowa State's weapons are going to step up in this game.
You could argue too, actually, now that we're talking this out loud, maybe the tight end spot for both teams is the most important position on the field this Saturday, because we highlighted one of the keys of the game. Maybe Iowa State does have success limiting Jace Brown. Well, Avery's got to throw to somebody, and Garrett Oakley is a phenomenal option. He's a phenomenal target. I mentioned the 5-star Lincoln Cure. Same thing for Iowa State. I don't know what we get out of those receivers, but we know we have Gabe Burkle. We know we have Ben Bramer, and maybe that's who Rocco goes to in this first game just because he's so uncertain with what he's got. I thinking out loud here, but maybe the tight ends could be the most important position for both sides on Saturday.
And on the flip side of that, we both know both of these linebacker groups are some of the best linebacker groups in the conference to kind of counter that. Both of these teams are really similar, and
they are.
I know the win totals don't necessarily reflect it and where they're supposed to finish in the Big 12, with K-State being up at the top and Iowa State being in the middle. But these two teams, like, rivalry game, they're very comparative, and it's going to come down to being a close game. That's just how that's how this game's gone, and that's how these Ireland games go with how high the stakes are at the beginning of the year. So it's going to come down to that fourth quarter and which coaching staff is more prepared and which players can answer the bell.
Let's get into it then, Justin. Great segue. Prediction time. We kind of did it last week a little bit with our full we went through the entire Iowa State schedule, previews and predictions, but we saved it for this episode. And I think right now I've seen it as much as 4. I've seen it as little as 3. I think right now we got Iowa State at +3.5 at -108. Your over-under is kind of sitting at 49.5, which I've just been so locked into the point spread that this is the first time I saw the over-under at 49.5. So I do kind of think that's interesting. Quick thought. I haven't looked into it too much. I lean over in that one, actually, thinking about it early, but who's to say? So, Justin, I'll let you go first. Prediction time. Give us a score, just like you always do. And who comes out with a victory in Dublin?
Yeah, I know if you watched last week's season preview, I picked Kansas State to come out on top on this one. And as much as it pains me, I feel like if I was betting, I would probably have to go betting on Kansas State in this side. But like I said, I think it's going to be a close game. And if you're giving me Iowa State +3.5, I'm taking that. But I would probably take Kansas State to win this one. I think there's just less question marks with Kansas State coming into the game, at least. Obviously, both teams have a lot of upside, and we have yet to see some of Kansas State to take that next step. But just with some of their weapons, some of the guys on defense, feel a little more comfortable with them at the beginning of the year, and especially with a fully healthy Avery Johnson. Iowa State's really struggled with some running quarterbacks the last couple of years, and I'm sure that that's going to come into play this upcoming Saturday. So if I had to pick, I would pick Kansas State to win this one, but I do have Iowa State covering that number. And I think it is something, I know it's kind of hard earlier in the year. You should take some unders just based on like kind of more vanilla offenses.
Week 0 is always overs, baby. We'll save that for our later episode.
I think if Avery Johnson starts running the ball and they start putting up some scores early, Iowa State's going to be able to match and keep it close. So I'd probably say somewhere around the like 25-28 Kansas State or something like
That's
that.
An over.
Yeah, that would be an over and an Iowa State cover. It's a very niche pick there, but
yeah,
kind of what I'm feeling.
And I also forgot to almost do this, guys. It's been almost 9 months since we've done a game preview. So, Justin, we're going to be doing this again this year because it was a lot of fun last year. First of all, shopnorivals.com. Let us know in the comments your score prediction. Who's going to win, the exact score. If you guys go 2 for 2, and none of you did last year, so good luck. But if you guys go 2 for 2, whether you're a K-State fan, whether you're an Iowa State fan, we will get you guys a hat on us at shopnorivals.com. So shout out to them. Shout out to you guys. Let us know in the comments if you guys know ball and give us your first score prediction of the year. You got to think this one, just like Kansas State's going to be really up for it. A loss would mean 3 in a row for Matt Campbell and Iowa State. And I do not think Chris Kleiman takes that as for an answer.
I don't think Iowa State wants to lose this game though either. All they ever hear about is how good Kansas State is and how they're always the favorites to win the conference. It's not something that like Iowa State's just going to stroll in and be like, we've beat them the last 2 times we've played them. Like we're going to do it again. Like, I don't think that's the case at all.
I appreciate that, Justin, which was going to lead into my next point. Because I think the entire offseason, you've had a team who's won 2 years in a row, who returns their starting quarterback, who returns some of their best players, and your over-under's lower than K-State, your ranking's lower than K-State. And when you talk about a lot of talk about who's going to win the Big 12, you don't hear Iowa State in every conversation, but you hear Kansas State in every conversation. Iowa State's got a chip on their shoulder. And for that, I think that's something that maybe Kansas State is kind of underestimating. They want to end the streak, but Iowa State feels like the underdog, and clearly they are, according to Vegas. So I would take Iowa State plus 120 to the counter, and I would take Iowa State to win this one 28-24. And that would be an over for you sickos, you junkies who like to bet over-unders in week 0. So I think Iowa State wins this one 28-24 for a couple of reasons. I'm excited about what can make of this running the football. I think Iowa State can have success again, and I don't think weather has to play a factor to it. I'm excited for what the tight ends can bring to the table. And defensively, like, we get all those linebackers back, and I can't wait. I can't wait to watch Big 9-5 play 70 snaps on Saturday in Ireland, because I think he's built for it, and I think he's ready for it. And there's all the credit to Kansas State and how good that defensive line is, but I don't think they have the best defensive lineman playing in the football game on Saturday. So I'm going to take Dom Orange in that one. So you good with that prediction? Can I go there?
Yeah, no, I don't think that's a crazy prediction at all. If I were to bet, I would take Iowa State in this game, but like, I understand why they're the underdog. I think the biggest things that I'm looking at is how we're going to handle that Kansas State defensive line and how we're going to handle Avery Johnson's mobility. But if our linebackers come ready to play and they're able to contain him a little bit and force him to make a mistake, and if our offensive line can handle that Kansas State defensive line, like, the ceiling's the limit for this Iowa State team. But those are obviously my biggest question marks that I want to see happen first before I'm going to put my money behind it.
Well, Justin, you know what they say. That's why they play the games. So it's enough of our talk. It's been exciting to preview this, and I am so excited to watch Cyclone football again this Saturday, as I'm sure all of you are, to watch your team again. And college football is so back. Check us out at Play the Fight Song. Subscribe to the channel. We cover college football, all 136 teams, all year round. My name is Jake. That's my brother, Justin. We'll be back next week. As always, whether it's in Ireland or if it's in the United States, let's go Cyclones.